Welcome to the Holly Hibbard Leadership Podcast, your go-to source for actionable insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories to help you lead with faith-filled purpose at work and at home. If you're looking to equip, empower, and encourage yourself to thrive in an ever-changing world, you're in the right place. I'm Holly Hibbard, and with over 20 years of experience as a science teacher, leadership coach, entrepreneur, and relationship mentor, I understand the challenges and growth opportunities that come with pursuing your passion. Whether you're chasing career goals, taking entrepreneurial leaps, or finally reaching for those long postponed ambitions, I'm here to help. So let's get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations and explore ways you can lead your family, lead your life, and find your calling with intention and faith. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the show. I want to talk about bouncing back stronger today and building personal resilience. You know, the first thought that comes to mind is I remember when my dad passed away in 2013. It was so painful. And what's funny is he was sick for a little while, but not to the point where I or my brother thought he was going to pass away soon. But I remember very vividly, there was a night in my apartment where he was not on a deathbed or anything, but I broke down sobbing, like falling apart. And I remember the pain and the worry and the nausea that came with that of loss before it had happened. And I'll call that to this day pre-grieving, like a pre-grieving period. I actually went through that before I lost my mom too this year. And when I think of resilience, man, losing my dad did make me a more resilient person at the time. And we'll see if losing my mom does the same. And I did bounce back stronger. But you know what? If you want to be a resilient person, I believe you shouldn't have to go through a massive macro trauma or even a micro trauma to have that happen. And in fact, as huge of a traumatic situation that was in losing my dad at the time, and I keep referencing that because I was in my early to mid 30s and it wasn't something I was ready for or prepared to even think about at all. But not that many years later, I was in a relationship and I got dumped. And that pain was way worse than losing my dad. And I remember in that moment feeling like my insides were on fire. And I thought, why does this hurt worse than my dad dying? Like, what? This is so messed up over a boy, you know? And both of these situations, if we think about going through fires in our life, refined by fire, as the Bible will say, yes, it can help us, if we're committed to it, to create tools and build ways for ourselves to bounce back stronger in the future when things really go wrong. So for example, in my future, when my mom passed, I have another set of tools I can access because I've been through tough times. When I went through other breakups later in my life, went through tough times. I also have been through a bankruptcy in my life where I lost everything. Totally my fault. Like totally my fault, totally my issue. I've made a super vulnerable Facebook Live about it, I think one time in my entire career because it's so hard. If you want me to do an episode about my bankruptcy, just leave me a comment or send me a note somewhere because it took me years to be able to talk about that. But losing everything was one of the massive traumas I went through that helped me to build personal resilience. But if we don't want to go through those massive things, or let's say you've come to a more stable part of your life where you know there's going to be bumps in the road, big ones and little ones, you know you're going to have to handle setbacks. But if I want to get better at handling setbacks, I don't want to go through the major setbacks to get better at handling the setbacks. Like, is there a hack? Is there a way for me to learn how to take these failures and turn them into an opportunity without lining up all these ways in my life that I can screw things up and figure it out from there. Because yeah, the answer is there are some ways that you can learn to stay strong under pressure. There are some habits that can help you to do that. So let's start with this. The power of having a growth mindset. And if you're listening here on my leadership podcast, I assert that you have a growth mindset. The power of your growth mindset is your personal resilience. It's part of the personal resilience. If you have a commitment to grow, that means you probably have a commitment to handle a setback face on and head first, knowing that, okay, I see the fire and I'm about to walk through it. We used to say in trainings that I used to lead, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. And man, does that suck. we hate that for us. The only way out is through. But if you have a growth mindset, you can start to, while you're walking toward that fire and stepping into that fire, you can use, one of the habits is to remind yourself that you are committed to growing from this experience. I really can't stand the whole phrase of everything happens for a reason. I'm just not a fan of bumper sticker wisdom. And everything happens for a reason. That line makes me feel like we're all trying to play God and that somehow we're all going to have it laid out for us someday of why this thing happened. But what I will say is you can create on the other side of that fire an opportunity for you to see and learn, okay, that was a failure, that was a fire, that was a challenge. What did I take away from that? Not, why was I being punished so I can learn this lesson? No, my friend. No, just no. But rather, okay, I'm going through this fire. What am I learning about myself as I go? What am I learning that I need to do, habits I need to keep in place so that I can keep my decision making as crisp and clean as possible during this time? Or on the other side of that fire, okay, what am I learning about myself now where I can see this is how I grieve a situation. This is the kind of time I need. This is the kind of support I need. This is the level of how busy and preoccupied I need to keep myself so that I can process what I have just gone through. Those are habits that a person who's committed to who has a growth mindset has. The habit is a habit of reflection, and that creates personal resilience, because otherwise, if you're just walking through the fire and just bumper stickering your life and saying everything happens for a reason, you're not thinking deeply. You're just hoping that something's suddenly going to come whack you over the head and tell you why you just walked through hell. And it's not going to happen. But you are thoughtful enough, if you give yourself time and you're committed to it, to see that fire as an opportunity and to notice the refinement process and how you dealt with it in a way that worked for you and in ways that didn't work for you as well. So the other thing that you can do to build your personal resilience is know that there are techniques you can use while you are going through those moments of stress and fire. Use these techniques to stay calm. Now, calm does not mean you are at a level 10 out of 10 panic and you're going to use these techniques and habits and suddenly you're going to be a 0, you're going to be a 1, you're going to be floating. No, that doesn't, that's not realistic. That's called numbing yourself out and escapism. That's not entirely healthy. But you may be able to take that 10 and dial it down to a 6. You may be able to take that 10 and dial it down to, maybe even to a 4, a 3, who knows? Like as my mom was battling cancer for the last year and a half, oh my goodness, 10 out of 10. Stressful, terrifying. We knew it was terminal. We knew it would take her life at some point. Freaking awful. Just awful. So how did I learn from going through that fire now that I'm on the other side of it and she's passing, or she has passed, and I'm learning, yeah, I'm grieving now. There's a whole other ball of wax. But during that time, my version of calm was if I could just take a day every couple weeks and not have any outside stimulus, that was my version of staying calm. It didn't mean that I was necessarily doing deep breathing or praying or reading my Bible necessarily. But for me, staying calm, one of the techniques I used was to notice simply how overstimulated I was, how much decision fatigue I was experiencing, and giving myself a day to decompress from noise, from notifications, from decision making. And that brought my panic and my stress down a couple notches for a moment. And of course, it did start back up again. Then there were other things to stress about and worry about. Or sometimes the stress I was managing was not my own. My mom was going through a lot emotionally also, and I had to be that support for her. It was almost like I was absorbing her stress from her. And there were times where it went the other way too. Like I'm panicking about her, but then I'm talking to her about it and she's absorbing it from me. It was just like this back and forth and I laugh because it's so messed up. It's so not healthy. Obviously I'm here. My mom isn't. But those are some of the techniques that I was using at the time to manage the stress and dial down the stress, to get to closer to calm, let's say that. And that is a way to build personal resilience, is to release that expectation that any of these things that you do while you're in the midst of the fire are going to take you down to a zero. Now, if you are in a fire or a situation and you are only hoping to find ways to just make the feeling go away, be curious with yourself as to whether you're looking to escape or not. And escape could look like clinging on to a number of things. It can look like clinging on to stimulation from social media. It can look like looking for more attention. It could look like addictions of different sorts, substance uses, overuses. There's a lot of things that we can cling to when we're trying to get that calm down to a number that just simply is not reasonable or healthy in that moment. So it's important whether you use techniques or you don't, or you notice you're leaning toward escapism, to build a support system, build a support network. I can tell you, I will affectionately refer to them as my top 3. And I have a multitude of friends in different circles of my life who all mean so very much to me, no matter how often or not so often I see them. But my recent top 3 in the last year and a half were 3 of my closest girlfriends, 2 who don't live in the same state as me, and 1 who does, who I could go to them morning, noon, night, come hell or high water, any mood, and talk. Or I could text one of them when I was going through something. I could text them 911 and my phone would ring because they knew I just needed a moment. And if you are like me and you have a hard time leaning on others for support, or just asking someone to be a listening ear for you or to give you advice, I want to share this with you because I'm the same way. I'm very independent. And it can be really tough for me to ask for help. So I had to get clear on, with my support network, I had to know what kind of support to ask for. Sometimes the kind of support I needed was someone just to listen to me and not interrupt. And so I could text my friend 911 and one of them would call me and it would be like, all right, go. and I would vent and I would cry and I would get out all these emotions because, especially with my mom, but then also like moving and getting engaged and planning a wedding, like it was a very, 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 very stressful time. The stresses of our life, by the way, those fires in our life aren't all things that are destroying our life or the life of others. There were a lot of joyful, exciting things that were happening in my life too, but I still needed a support network. So they knew, did I just need to vent? Sometimes I did want advice. And my top 3, as I've said before, what they're so good at is remembering to ask, all right, do you want my advice? Or do you just want me to listen? Which is so powerful, so simple. And yet they're committed to doing it. And they do that with their family. They do that with their spouses. And it's become a norm for us. My brother and I actually have the same type of relationship too now, where we have gotten real good at communication and saying, all right, do you want my feedback or not? Are you, or I know you do, but are you in a mental state where you want to hear it? Because sometimes it's hard when we trust these people that are in our support system to give us that type of advice and feedback. And we just might not be feeling mentally stable enough that day to hear it. So build that support network and notice if you have a tough time asking for support, let them know that. And they may be so great that they become accustomed just to even shooting you a text here and there and saying, hey, thinking about you, or just checking on you. Man, that means the world when my friends do that. And sometimes I'm ready to talk and sometimes I'm not. But their level of calm and security for me in that moment is a form of empowerment. It's them lending me their power in that moment while I just felt I couldn't do it. So they almost had their resilience on loan to me. And when I got through my emotional moment, it did support me in bouncing back stronger. So in this process, like I said, learning from your failures, learning from your setbacks, gaining more and more clarity on what you need to handle your grief, to handle your heartbreak, to handle your loss, to handle these unexpected times that you've gone through. All of this will cultivate a mental toughness and a perseverance. But notice that all the things I've said today in this episode, none of it is passive. It doesn't just happen. The bumper sticker wisdom, everything happens for a reason, that is passive. That is passive, thinking that some magical fairy is going to come down and tell you this is why this happened. Ta-da! All right, moving on to the next thing. No. You've got to commit to the growth mindset and commit to taking the time to reflect and start adding up for yourself. This is what works for me while moving through these moments, and this is what doesn't. And stop expecting yourself to deal with hard times in your life the same way that everybody else does. You got to create your own toolbox of techniques and habits that get you through these tough times. And the only way to create that toolbox is to start learning what tools are out there, trying them on, trying them out, and they may work for you and they might not. But passivity is definitely not the key in this. It's an active, committed, persistent, consistent building of that set of tools so that your emotional intelligence is boosted. And yes, that builds resilience, mental toughness, perseverance, and you can bounce back from tough times, period, but also bounce back stronger, better than ever, having learned more than you ever had. I would love to know from you, what's been a tough time in your life where you felt you built the most resilience in a short period of time? Drop me a comment, send me an email. I would love to hear from you. I know I'm not alone in some of the tough stuff. And like I said, if you want that episode about my bankruptcy, I don't know why it's not a leadership podcast, but I will say it did make me a better leader. So maybe there's something there. But let me know if you want me to record that, and maybe I will. But you got to drop me a message. All right. Thank you so much again for being here. And until next time, I will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. I'm high-fiving you right now because I'm so proud of you for putting your personal growth first. Remember, I believe in you, and with faith-filled intention and committed actions, you can lead your life purpose, and family to wherever you dream possible. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you'd take 30 seconds to help others discover the show. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, share the show with your friends and family, or screenshot this episode to your Instagram stories and tag me at the Holly Hibbard. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. I'm always here cheering you on, and until next time, stay curious, remain encouraged, and keep empowering yourself. You're doing better than you think, I promise.